and we'll begin with the Mishnah, the new perek, Hotziulo, which is the fifth perek of Masechet Yoma. And in the previous perek, back on Daf Mem Gimel, we had learned that the Kohen Gadol, so we're now starting again, for those who came late, starting the fifth perek on Daf Mem Zayin. And okay, good morning. How are you? And we had learned in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Gimel that the Kohen Gadol had to take a machta and he would push aside the coals on the Mizbeach this way and that way. This is a Mizbeach HaChitzon. And he would scoop up these coals, these hot coals in the machta, and he would place them down on what's called the Roved Harvi, the fourth row on the Ritzpas HaZorah. And later on, he would take those coals into the Kodesh Kadoshim to be makter the Ketores. Now the Mishnah wants to know what happens afterwards. He's got the machta with the Gecholim, and now we need to set up what's going to come next, and stage by stage, step by step, culminate with the avodah haktores lifnai v'lifnim. Hotziulo es hakaf es hamachta. We're now ready for what's called chafina. Chafina means when the Kohen Gadol scoops up in his two hands the ktores. Now, hotziulo means that there was a certain place, we call it a lishkas hakelim, and that's where they stored the clay shares. We're not sure exactly where it was located. Tiferes Yisrael on this Mishnah writes that it's possibly one of the 38 lishkos that were around the Koslei HaHechal. But in any event, they brought out a kaf and a machta for the purpose of the Ketores. And we're going to see later on what was the point of bringing out a machta when we already had a machta of Gecholim that's sitting on the Ritzvas Hazar and the Roved Haravi. But in any event, Chafan, Melo Chafnov, he now has a kaf, a large spoon that's full of Ketores. He digs his two hands to scoop up Melo Chafnov from this kaf, and Nasan Lisocha kaf. He's going to replace the Melo Chafnov in the kaf. It's very interesting. At the end of the day, he's going to be carrying the Ketores into the Kodesh Kadoshim with the kaf. So why do we bother with Melo Chafnov? Why not just skip that whole step? Why not just come out of the Lishkas HaKelim with a kaf full of Ketores and take that kaf together with the machta of Gecholim into the Kodesh Kadoshim? No, there was a separate requirement, an avoda called chafina, to scoop it up in his hands. And the Gemara is going to derive this from Psukim. How much is Melo Chafna? You could have a Kohen Gadol has very large hands. You could have a relatively small frame. Kohen Gadol has smaller hands. The Mishnah says it's all relative. HaGadol if he gadlov, HaKatan if he katna. The larger Kohen Gadol with larger hands would take out a larger volume of the Ketores, and a smaller. Kach hoisa midasa. We don't know what these three words mean. Kach hoisa midasa. We'll get that in the Gemara. Natal machta. Now he has a machta of Gecholim that is sitting on the Roved Haravi and the Ritzpas HaZorah, he now takes it up into his hand, the Yad Yamino. He's now bringing the Machta of Gecholin into the Kodesh Kadoshim. He's got to carry it in his right hand. That's a kaf, the kaf into which he placed the Maloch Chofnov of Ktores. He's carrying Biyad Smolo in his left hand. The Gemara is going to ask why. You would have said the opposite. I mean, the Gecholim are only there to burn the Ktores. The Ktores is the mitzvah. The Gemara says that this mission of Hotziulo Kaf V'Machta, it sounds like only at this point they're bringing out the Machta. That doesn't make any sense. Machta Tonile, we had in the Mishnah back on Daf Mem Gimel, Natal Samachta V'Ol Rosh HaMizbeach V'Chote V'Yored. He took a Machta up to the top of the Mizbeach at the Marocha. He used that Machta to remove the Gecholim, and now you're bringing out a Machta. So Gemara says, Hasam Machta de Gecholim v'Hacha Machta de Ktores. There are two pans. There's one pan that's used for the Gecholim, and that was mentioned already in the earlier Mishnah when he took the Machta and he was chote begecholim, filling up the machta with gecholim, placing it on the ritzvah hazara. And now, what our Mishnah is telling us is they brought out a machta of ketores. In other words, they took a pan, they filled it up with ketores, and inside this ketores that's being carried by a machta, the Kohen Gadol would scoop up with his two hands and do a chafina and take from the machta into the kaf. So when we talk about two machtos, one mentioned in the earlier Mishnah, one mentioned in our Mishnah, the first machta is for gecholim. The second machta is ketores. So he's got a machta pan full of ketores, which he picked up in the Lishkas Beis Havtidus, where they were manufacturing ketores. And now he digs his two hands into the machta and places those that scooped up ketores into the kaf. Now he's ready to enter into the Kodesh Kadoshim with the machta of Gecholim that's sitting on the Rovid Arvi on the Ritzvah Hazorah, and the kaf, which is full now of the Maloch Chofnav that he took from the machta of Ketores and placed into the kaf. He's going to carry the machta of Gecholim with his right hand and the kaf with his left. The Sanya we learned to the Brisa, Otzilo Kaf Reikon, Milishkas Hakelim. So this is the spoon that they're going to use for bringing in the Ketores, transporting the Ketores into the Kodesh Kadosh. Machta Gedusha Shel Ketores Milishkas Beis Havtinus, and there was a machta, not the machta of the Mishnah earlier, which is full of Gecholim sitting on the Ritzvah, but a machta that's full of what? Gedusha. It's overflowing, so to speak, with Ketores. The Mishnah says, Chafan Melo Chafnav, no saying L'tocha Kaf, Hagadol Lefi Gadla, Katan Lefi Katno, V'kach Hoysam Midos. So the Gemara asks, Kaf B'Yoma Kippurim Lomali. Why is it necessary for the Kohen Gadol to take the kaf on Yom Kippur? After all, the Torah says, "V'lakach melo chafnav Torah samim daka behevi v'beis laparochas." The Torah says he should take a scoopful of melo chafnav of Torah into the Kodesh Hadashim. Amar Achmana, that's what the Torah is saying. The Torah means no mention whatsoever of a kli. The Torah is not makted that he should bring the Ketores in a kli. He can bring it with Maloch Chafna. Now again, that's going to be an unbelievable feat, says the Gemara Mishum Delo Efsha. How is it possible that he's holding with two hands a Maloch Chafna of Ketores, and he's carrying a Machta of Gecholim? He only has two hands. The Hechi Navi. If we're going to say Ni Ayil, why doesn't he go in to the Kodesh Kedoshim twice? The first time, he's going to bring in the Gecholim in the Machta. The Hadar Na'ayil, then he's going to go back in a second time to Kodesh Kedoshim with a Molei Chafnav of Ktores, and we can cut out the Kli. No. That's a no-no. We're only going to allow the Kohen Gadol to go in Lifnai V'Lifnim once. Why? The pasuk says, "V'lokach melo machta gachle age, umelo chafnav ktores samim dakov vehevi mi beis laparoches." Vehevi means that he brings it into the paroches, right into the Kodesh Kedoshim, only once, not twice. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, maybe Nishkale Liktores Bechofnov. He has two palms in which he's carrying the Ktores. And where is he going to have a third hand to carry the Machta? Nachte LeMachta, let him bring the Machta into the Kodesh Kedoshim. Allah, why not just place the Machta of Gecholim on top of his full hands that are full with Ktores? So he'll be carrying the Ktores and the Macht of Gecholim into the Kodesh Kedoshim. Might be very heavy, but he's going to do it. So the Rishonim ask here, how does he get the Machta on top of the Molei Chafta? What does he just wiggle with his nose? Bewitched? How does he do this magic? So the Ritva writes, Hainu shekoin acher yaniach es hamachta al gabe yadav. Oh, and this I can't explain to you. Hu atzma the kohen gadol itlenav shinav. He'll take up the machta with his teeth. The anicheno al yadav, and he'll open his mouth such that the machta will sit on top of the Moloch Chafnayim. Yeah, I don't know how you pull that off. That's pretty impressive. The Leil, so in one, the Vasachas, he will go enter the Kodesh Kedoshim, and he's carrying both the Ktores Moloch Chafnov and the machta. Again, we can cut out the Kli, the Kaf. Gemara says that's impossible. Why? Kimoti Hasam, when he arrives at the Kodesh Kedoshim, he's got to put down the machta on the ground and then pour the Ktores, Moloch Chafnov, onto the Gecholim. There's no other Kohen to help him here at this point because no one's allowed into the Kodesh Kedoshim. It's Hechi Navi. How is he going to place the machta on the ground such that now he can burn the Ktores on the machta? His hands are full with Ktores. Nishkale b'shinei v'nachte lemachta. Perhaps you would say that if he's carrying the Moloch Chafna of Ktores on top of which is the machta of Gecholim, maybe when he gets into the Kodesh Kedoshim, he'll take a bite out of the handle of the machta and place it on the ground. That's not a very nice thing to do. To move the machta with his mouth. Hashta now lifnei melech basav v'domeinos imkel lifnei melech malchei amloch ma'kodesh baruch hu alachas kama v'kama. This would not be an appropriate behavior in the Kodesh Kadoshim, in the presence of the melech malchei amlochim, that he's biting into the machta. Hilkach lo efshar. Therefore, he must have a kli. Now, once again, if he has a kli, he's taken the Moloch Chafnayim from his two hands, poured it into this kaf. Now, he has a right hand free to pick up the machta shel gecholim, the left hand to carry the kaf with the Ktores, and we're in business. Now the Gemara wants to bring a proof that, in fact, This is what we find with regard to the Ketores of the Nesiim, which we're going to read about, which we read about last week. It says, Kafachas Asor Zov Malei Ketores. And the Nesiim brought the Ketores in a kaf. Now, this is all at the end of the Hakamas HaMishkan. Chincho Soves Kol Kelov and Nesiim Isnadvu Lahakriv Korbanos Lechanukas HaMizbeach Kol Nasi Hikriv Yom Echad Me'advarim Shehikriv Kol Nasi. One of the various things that each and every one of the Nesiim was makriv was the kaf Malei Ketores. And the Torah says explicitly, kaf achas, etc., Malei Ketores. Gemara brings this proof from the Nesiim because there is one opinion in Masechet Sukkah that lekicha al yidei acher lav shmei lekicha, and therefore ein litol as haktoris bekaf. Maybe we should apply this principle and say that since the pasuk says v'lakach in achremos with regard to the ketores, then it requires a lekicha without al yidei acher, without a kli. Like, for example, the Torah says with regard to lulav l'kachtan lechem, are you allowed to put a kli and the lulav is inside the kli and then do your netila by holding on to the kli? No. That's not v'lakach because that's al yidei acher. And the Nesiim, nevertheless, carry the ketores in a kaf. So it must be that even though in general we apply a principle called lekicha al yidei acher lav shmei lekicha, here the Torah says that v'lakach would even be al yidei acher, meaning that he takes the ketores into the kodesh kadashim in the kaf. The Mishnah says, not also machta b'yomi b'yamin. That's a kaf is small. So Gemara says, Yatziva bi'ara v'giyora b'shmei shmaya, which is a phrase that indicates you're saying something that's unacceptable. Right? Ha'ezrach shua ikar nimsa ba'aretz Yatziva bi'ara. In other words, every citizen is down on ground. Vager horeach, and now you have some sort of stranger sojourner whose tafel is he up in the Shmei Shamayim, up in the skies, meaning it would make more sense that Dafka the Ketores should be brought in with his right hand. The Machaper here is the Ketores. And the Gemara answers, Zo meruba v'zo muetas. It means that the macht of Gecholim is very, very heavy. And assuming the Kohen Gadol is a righty, and Zumuetes, the kaf of Ketores is, we said Hodek, it's very light. And therefore, we would want him to make life easy for the Kohen Gadol and carry that which is heavy in his right hand and that which is light in his left. And what happens if, let's say, you have less volume of gecholim, so less weight, and the ketores weighs in the kaf as much as the gecholim in the machta, and that would apply, according to Rashi, in a case where the Kohen Gadol is very large, so his molei chofnayim, he can be machzik shlosha kavim in the chafina. So the Gemara is saying that since Rov Kohanim, meaning Kohanim Gedolim, is the Gecholim is much heavier than the Ketores, therefore for all Kohanim, they made it a standard practice that they carry the Machta in the right hand and the Kaf of Ketores in the left. The Gemara is not happy about that. What about Ukimaisa, the Rabbi Yishmael ben Kimchis? He was a Kohen Gadol, And his molech ofnaim, he was such a large person with large hands, was machzik arba kavim, as we'll soon see. The Ketores was therefore much heavier than the Gechalim. The Gechalim were only 3 kavim, and now we have 4 kavim of Ketores. So why should he take the Ketores in his left hand in such a case? And the Gemara answers, Zo chama v'zo tzonenes. The macht of Gechalim is very hot. And therefore, you needed an extra effort to carry the Gechalim. Therefore, he will carry it in his right hand. But the Ketores is tzonenes. It's, I guess, say room temperature, and it's much lighter. And therefore, it can remain in his left hand. Omer Lov Rabbi Shmuel, a little bit of a gadita here, a short gadita, an interlude. And he is the son of somebody by the name of Kimchis, and they identify him as Rabbi Shmuel ben Pavi, who's mentioned back on Daf Tes, who was one of the Kohanim Gedolim during Bayis Sheni, but maybe he was at Stoki. Normally a Kohen average would be Chofein 3 kavim. He was so large, he was Chofein 4 kavim, the Omer, and he would boast about his mother. Kol Hanashim Zered Zerdu, or Zered Ima Ola Lagak. Okay, I'm going to read to you the English translation here, and then we can compare it to the Hebrew translation. He says, all women received zarid, but my mother's zarid rose up to the roof. Zarid, he says, is like our son, are types of cereal produced from wheat. Zarid is made from kernels that were crushed into 4 particles each. Our son is made of kernels ground into 5 particles each. This is all based on a Gemara in Brachos. In any event, these foods are very nourishing, and it was customary to serve them to pregnant women in order to fortify them, to strengthen them, and their unborn children. Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis attributes his unusual physical stature to the quality of the zarid and arsan that his mother consumed when she was pregnant with him. Now, the Hebrew has a different approach to this whole discussion. Where is it? I'm sorry. The Hebrew approach is in the Ika Diamri. Ika Diamri, this Zered that we spoke about is the Arsan, which again, as we said before, are foods made of wheat. And a mother would eat that wheat during the time of her pregnancy. Rabbi Bar Yonasan, Rabbi Son, Rabbi Chiel, Arsan Yafa Lechol. It's very healthy to strengthen the body if you're a chola. And we're going to use this for an meuberes, because a pregnant woman is considered a chola. And regarding the Zeren and Arsan, that my mother, I'm talking in the first person in Rabbi Shmuel's mouth, that my mother would take while I was in embryo, is that gave her a certain koach that went superior beyond that of other women, and therefore she gave birth to Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. In fact, she had 7 sons, as we'll soon see. Ika Diamri B'Shichva Zera. This whole story about the Zered is a cover-up, we'll call it a tzniistic way of alluding to the Zera, which would impregnate a woman. She'ein avlad notzar mikol hatipa shel shichva zera el min haborav hatov sheba. The Gemara Nida establishes that in the process of conception, one particular tipa of shichva zera, because there are millions of shichva zera, right? Is the tov sheba is chosen by, again in the mashal, by a zered. Zered hu min kana lach. It's a kind of soft, pliable reed. I guess it's moist. The osim mimena chavilos zradim, and they make a whole bundle of these zradim. Right, the Gemara in Shabbos talks about the zradim, and he gathers them together and violates the Isra Ma'amer, the Malacha Ma'amer. Anyway, so the Shichva Zera, which my mother was kolate, and from which I was born, says Rabbi Shmuel, was Habarur Vatov Sheba. Klomer, he kolta chelik baru mishubach yosem mikol hanoshim. In other words, even though in every case of conception, there's a birur of the best zera, but now in this case, it was the best of the best. Uki Rabbi Avo Rami, he asked the stira, Siv, there's a pasuk in Sefer Shmuel, where the word vatazreni is written without an aleph, vatazreni chayil milchama, and then Ksiv, the pasuk in Tehillim, says vata'azreni chayil milchama, adding the aleph. We have a discrepancy between the pasuk in Shmuel and the pasuk in Tehillim. And now Rabbi Avo is going to reconcile this apparent contradiction. Omar, he says that David declared in front of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Zerisani, you chose me, because the word Zerisani comes from the Shoresh Zoreh, Zayin Vav Reish He, which means winnowing. So we take away the psolas when we throw up the tvua with its kernel up to the air, the chaff flies away, and you're left with pure tvua. And yitzartani minatov habara shebetipa. So that's what David HaMelech is saying about vatezrani. Bar v'tov means removing all the klipos in Meleches Zorah. And therefore, Zeraz Tani. And Zeraz Tani means I was created as a Mizuras, a Bari v'chazak. So now David says, until in Vata Azreni. And that has a different meaning. Vata Azreni, when you add the aleph, in other words, before the aleph, it's a malach of Zorah to get rid of the psolas. But now that David HaMelech is the product, he's fashioned by the pure zera after the birur, like Melech Zorah, where the psolas is removed. Now, Vatazreni. And Vatazreni is Miloshin Nesinas Koch. Now I have power. Omru Oliver Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis, Am Achas, Siper Dvarim im Aravia Chad B'Shuk. It was in the middle of the Avod of Yom Kippurim, Rabbi Shmuel the Kohen Gadol, and he went out to talk to an Arab. It doesn't say why. The Meiri says that this Aravi was the king, and Mishum Amos Malchus Yotza L'daber Imo B'emtza Avodas Yoma Kippurim. Now, while there's a discussion going on between Rabbi Shmuel and this Aravi, Nitiza Tzinora is a little bit of spit, Mipiv al Bgada. And this spittle of a non-Jew falls on the big day kahuna of Rabbi Shmuel, the Kohen Gadol. Now the Chachamim made a gzera on Nachri, that every Nachri has the status, and we assume he's a Zav. The rok of a Zav, the spittle of a Zav, is Metame B'masa, and therefore once the rok of this Aravi, of this Nachri, reached the Begadim of Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel is carrying that rok because he's walking, so now Rabbi Shmuel contracts Tumah because Hanoseas HaRok, if he's carrying Rok by virtue of the fact that he's moving with the Rok on his Begadim, then he's Nitma Ad Sof Hayom. Rok Zav Mitami B'masa is based on a parsha in Vayikra Tezvav. And the Gzeres Chacham was that on Nachrim is their Rok is like the Rok of a Zav. Now, it's the middle of Avodas Yom Kippurim. Rabbi Shmuel's the Kohen Gadol. He goes out. Now he contracts Tumah, which is going to take him until the evening. He can't go back into the Mikdash. Is Nichlas Yeshevev Achiv. If I'm not mistaken, he's one of the Asar Rugi Malchus. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, he goes into the Beis HaMikdash. Shimesh Tachtavi. They bring him out of the bullpen, and now he takes over the game, and he's now doing the rest of the Avodah. Rasa Iman Shnei Kohanim Gedolim B'Yom Echad. Imagine the mother of Rabbi Shmuel Kimchis now gets to witness two of her sons on one day, both serving as the Kohen Gadol. The Shuv Amar Lava Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis, another story almost identical to the first story. Am Achas Yotza V'Siper Im Hegmon Echad Bashuk. On one particular Yom Kippurim, I don't know why Rabbi Shmuel didn't learn his lesson, but anyway, he goes out to speak to the Hegmon. It could be because he had no choice, the covet of the Sar, or the Melech, or the Hegmon. The Nitza, again, the same thing happens. Sinora mipiv al b'gada. So some spittle came out of the mouth of this Hegmon and fell onto the begadim of Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel becomes Tomei. Now, in the previous story, the brother of Rabbi Shmuel, Yeshevev, took over the service on that day. But in the second story that we're learning now, Nichnas Yosef Achiv v'Shimesh Tachta. Yosef, another one of the brothers, replaces Rabbi Shmuel. Now the question is why? Why didn't they bring Rabbi Yona's son back? He says in the footnote, Ma shelo nichnas yeshovev echov. Shamesh tachto, come over bikakev. So shemesi yeshovev. Hodish the Taretz came to the. All right, the whole bunch of answers here as to why they didn't bring Yeshevev, but they brought someone by the name of Yosef, another brother, Shimish Tachto, and he will now serve as a replacement. is therefore Rasa Iman Shnei Kohanim Gedolim B'Yom Echad. She merited having to sing two Kohanim Gedolim serving on the same day. Now, if we include Rabbi Shmuel, we have 7 sons. The Kulan Shimshu B'Kuna Gedola, and all 7 served as Kohanim Gedolim. Wow, that's like hitting the jackpot. It means that Rabbi Shmuel had certain sulim, and he was replaced by his brothers. And each time they replaced him with a different one of the brothers. You must have done something special and extraordinary to merit that all 7 of your sons would serve in the Beis Hamikdash as the Kohen Gadol. And somehow her husband is dropped out of the picture. What happened to Kimchis? Why isn't he mentioned here? He says, Yitochen, it's possible, Shekol Abanim Sheshimchu Bekahuna Gedola Lo Noldula Meish Echad El Mishnayim. So she was married to 2 men, and therefore we assume that the schus is her schus. Amar lahem, she responded, what is my great claim to fame? Why did God bestow this great? What was my merit? Mi Yomai lo ro koros basi kile sa'ari. I never exposed my hair to the walls of my house. That was my extraordinary snius, hisnagus, my behavior that goes beyond the letter of the law. And that's why I was zocha, no other mother was zocha to this. And the poskim want to derive from this Gemara that kisui rosh hasa'aros, bibayis, inside the house is a chumrah, v'eino me'ikar adin. Again, it's a very controversial topic where the women have to cover their hair indoors. But it seems that from the fact that she merited and she did something extra pious, then according to the strict letter of the law, she wasn't required to cover her hair. But then the Gemara says, Amrullah, the Chacham say, Harbe Asuke. There were other women, mothers, who were so careful about sneers, they would not expose their hair even indoors. V'lo ho'ilu. And yet, we don't find that they merited having your sons who were Kohanim Gedolim. And therefore the Gemara concludes she must have had other zchuyot, other than the fact that she was so tzanua. Tana Rabbanon. Now, a lot of what we're going to do now is about kmitza in Menachos. He says here in the footnote, in the Beis Hamikdash, there were different karbanos of mincha that were brought from soles and shemen that were mixed together. And then the Kohen Gadol would do a kmitza biyodo mina mincha, from this mincha, umaktir esachelek hanikmatz al mizbeach, that which was taken by the kmitza has to go on the mizbeach. Umosar mincha necheles lekohanim, and the balance of the mincha, besides the ketores, because besides the komets, because the komets was burnt on the mizbeach, was eaten by the kohen. Now, this maisa called kmitza was done by the kohen when he took some of the mincha by closing it into his hands and pushing it onto the palm of his hands. And the details will follow. In any event, this brisa says that when it says in the pasuk by Yikra Vav, it says, "Eirim imenu bekumtso," And we're going to derive from the Shelo Yaseh Mida Lekomets. So kumtzo is a reference to the palm of his hand, or that which he grabs between his fingers and the palm of his hand. And from the fact that the Torah says the heribimenu kumtzo, it means there should be direct contact between the hand of the Kohen and the komets. Shel yasa kli. He should not pour the contents of the mincha into a kli in order to measure out how much is a komets. Now, there's a kasha here for the Tosi Shonim in the name of the Rashbam that lechoretz davar pashut. If you read the psukim in Vayikra Beis in the Pasha Mincha, the kamatz means yikmotz biyada. So we're not going to accept Rashi's interpretation here. What was the havamina of quote unquote shelo yaseh kli mida? So the Tosi Yeshanim has a new pshat. He says when the Gemara says shelo yaseh mida lekomets, sheyimdod es hakmitza bekmitas yodo mitoch hamincha atzma. V'lo yitain tchila kemidas hakomets bekli yachach yikmots min hakli. He's not allowed to measure out a kmitza's worth into a kli, knowing that that kli has the volume, the capacity to receive a kmitza's worth, and then do the kmitza from the kli. Or rather, he has to do the kmitza directly from the solas, or the mixture of the solas with the shemen. Now we go back to the Kohen Gadol and the Torres on Yom Kippurim. Can he substitute kafina, and instead he could take a kli, and that kli has a capacity of volume, a capacity of a receptacle of a volume of molei chafnov, and instead of putting his hands into the Torres, he will put the kli into the Torres, because the kli holds exactly the midah of molei chafnov, of that particular Kohen Gadol. And the Gemara now analyzes the suffix Hasan with regard to komets, who there the Torah says you're not allowed to be komets b'kli, dichsiv b'kumtso. And the mashmos of b'kumtso is sheyikmotz biyado below b'kli midah. Aval hacha, but here with regard to the chafina of the Torahs on Yom Kippurim, the loksiv b'chafnav, it doesn't say it's his palms. Ella, it says umelo chafnav Torah samim daka. Lo, we don't require that the chafina be done dafka biyadav. The Torah is saying he could bring the Torah b'shir of molei chafnav. Molei chafnav indicates the volume of Torah that he has to take in, but he can take it in directly with the kli. Oh, Dylan, shall we say yolif malo mi komtzo? With regard to chafina, it says malo chafnav. With regard to the komets, it says v'kamatz misham malo kumtzo. Just like in Kemitza, where it says Malo, he has to be Komets biyadav and not through a Kli. So to Chafina, he has to be Chofin biyadav and not through a Kli. Toshma will be poshet this suffix from the following Mishnah. It says Kachaya, remember these were the three words we had no clue what they meant. My shall we assume that the kavanah of the Mishnah, when it says kachi midasa lav, is it not jim rotza lasos? If he wants to make a kli of midah cheres osa, he could take a kli that has the midah, the volume, the capacity of chafina of Torres, and that's what he's allowed to do. So we see from our Mishnah that chafan malo chafnav b'nasan letocha kaf, and the shear of chafina for this Kohen Gadol, lefi gadlo, lefi katno, if he wants to do it with a kli that has the midah of his chafina, then he's okay to do it. So for a gadol, we'll make a kli that's larger, and for a katan, we'll make a kli that's smaller. And that's what the Mishnah means when it says kach hoisa midasa, that the midah of the kli with which he's going to do the chafina instead of doing it b'yadayim is equal and reflects the size of the Kohen Gadol. Lo, the Gemara rejects it. This is not a proof from our Mishnah. Hachi kamar. This is what the Mishnah has in mind. When he was chofei below chafnav and he put it into a kaf, and first he has to be chofei below chafnav and then put it into a kaf. Ukshem shaya chofei esektoris michutz lekodesh hakadoshim kacha yechozer v'chofna lifnim. That just like he was chofei the Ketores outside the Kodesh Kadoshim, so too he would pour from Molo Chafnav into the Kaf. I should say it the other way around. He should pour from the Kaf into his Chafnav, Lifnim, when he gets into the Kodesh Kadoshim. And then when he has a Molo Chafnav in the second Chafina of Ketores, he places it on the Gecholim, on the Machta for Haktorah purposes. So the Mishnah of a Kachaisa Midasa means the Chafina Shebifnim, in the Chafina inside. And Af Bifnim Moded below Malo Chafna, Geshem Shahaya Modeda Bachutz. That just like we had to make sure Bachutz that he has a midah of Malo Chafnav, so too in the Kodesh Kadoshim, when he's chozer v'chofna, by pouring from the kaf into the palms of his hand, in order to put it on the gechalim, he would have to do it in the Malo Chafnav, just like he did outside the Kodesh Kadosh. Gemara says, Shma min al-chofein v'chozer v'chofein. So we at least derive the conclusion that in addition to the chafina that he does outside the Kodesh Kadoshim, he needs another chafina in the Kodesh Kadoshim. And yet the Gemara, which was going to come up later on in this parak, vacillates about this problem. And the Gemara answers, Dilma, there's no proof from our Mishnah, because perhaps what the Mishnah has in mind is she'im rotzo lasos midah, if he wants to create a kli that will hold that midah of chafina of the Ketores Osa, as we wanted to say originally in our first interpretation of Mishnah, we cannot determine anything from this Mishnah, one way or the other, and establish that you can create a kli with the midah of chafina, because it's always possible that the Mishnah means that there's a chafina bachutz and another chafina inside. So since we can always disprove these proofs in this direction and the other direction, therefore we cannot come to any definite conclusion from our Mishnah. In Nami, there's another way in which I could deflect this proof and interpret v'kach haisa midasa, that Rashay lasos klimida lechafina lo linyan shechofein v'chos v'chofein, but rather what the Mishnah has in mind is shaloyi chaser v'shalo yosef, that the chafina has to be exactly precise, a midah of molei chafana chofna. He cannot add, nor can he subtract. Tana Rabbanu, we learned in the Brisa with regard to komets. Now we're going back to komets of a mincha at the beginning of Sefer Vayikra v'kamatz misham melo kumtzo is yachol. I might think that melo kumtzo means that he should fill it up above and beyond. Sheimala yosem mimashe b'tocha komets. Maybe he should add a little bit more, and that would be called mevorotz. Mevorotz means overflowing. Talmud Loma bikumtzo. It's got to be exactly, precisely kumtzo, not more and not less. And the shirayim of the mincha is betoch kumtzo v'lo yetzel achutz. So anything that goes outside his his komets is considered shirayim, which will be eaten, as we said, by zichrei kuna. The Bryce says v'i bikumtzo. If the Torah would have only said the word bikumtzo instead of malokumtzo, is yachal, I would have said afilu b'rosh etzba'oso. He only has to take a little bit of the solace with the tips of his fingers. He doesn't have to fill up the entire palm of his hand. And in truth, Rashi says that according to this Havamina, the least amount of the komets is better. Talmud Lomar malo kumtzo. What's malo kumtzo? Kidamakatze kidakamtzi inshi, reflecting the normal average kmitza. Haketzad, what is this Maisa kmitza? That's got to be kidamakze inshi, an average kind of kiderech hanoshim likmots v'yideh. Is chofer, he covers with sholosh etzba'osav, his three fingers, right, the point of the middle finger and this finger, the next to the pinky, which is called in Hebrew a kmitza, right? So he's got etzba, oma, and kmitza. Kidamakze inshi, he should do it in the way that most people would do it. Haketzad, what is called a Maisa Kmitza, Chofesh Sholosh Etzba'osav. He English word for Chofe. He closes. Okay, I would have said he covers. Anyway, he closes Sholosh Etzba'osav, his three middle fingers, leaving out the pinky and the thumb, al pisas yado, on the palm of his hand, the komets, and whatever he has grabbed from the three fingers of his hand into pressing into the pas yodo, into the palm of his hands, that is considered komets, a komets of the soles mincha. And now we're up to Daf Mem Zayin Amid Beis.